In this lab, I'm going to be demonstrating how we can set up a back end and a front end for web applications. So in this lab, I'm going to be using WordPress as our front end and then MySQL as our back end. But the main idea is that we are going to host the back end on a separate server. So our backend database is going to be on a separate server, and our WordPress web application is going to be on a separate server, and we are going to link them together. And then with that, users will be able to connect to it and access the website. So here we can see the front end, and then we can see the back end. I have set up two Ubuntu Linux servers. So two Ubuntu Linux servers. So I just got a server, so they have no GUI, but then I hope we can all see and find the differences. So these are the two Ubuntu servers. This one here is going to be our web server, so we are going to install WordPress on this server here, and then on this server we are going to install MySQL also here, and then later on we'll connect them and then we'll test for connectivity. The first thing that I need to confirm or show you is that we need to have these two servers on the same network. So here in VirtualBox I have created a network, a NAT network, this NAT network 2. So in this network you see our IP addresses. So in this network we are going to have both our server and then both servers, and then a regular user desktop machine which will be running our tests on to see if our web application is working and if the database is working, and we can also do some pings to check if everything is working nicely. So the first software I'm going to install is on the zip. So I'm going to run sudo okay, so I'm going to run sudo apt install unzip, put in our password, and that will also install for us. Okay, and the next thing we are going to install is PHP. So sudo apt install PHP. Yes. Okay, so PHP has successfully installed. The next thing we are also going to install is PHP MySQL. So we're going to command again, so apt install PHP -MySQL. Y for yes. Okay, so Now we are done with that. The last software or program that we are going to install is our Apache service, which will help us host our websites on port 80. So we're going to go run sudo apt install Apache. Okay, so we already have Apache 2 installed. So if you do not have Apache 2 already installed, you can use that command to install Apache 2. So the next thing we want to do is to enable Apache 2 on startup. So we can do that by running sudo sys system ctl system control enable Apache 2, and that will enable Apache 2. So the next time that we turn off the server and then we bring it back on, Apache 2 will start automatically and serve our website. So let's just confirm if Apache 2 is enabled by running sudo systemctl then status Apache CTL, and then we can see that it's enabled, the loaded part is enabled, and the preset is also enabled. So everything is working great, fine and great. Okay, so let's just check if port 80 is working, or we could directly check if the website is running. So let me log in here, and we can see, we can visit our website because this user is also on the same network. So we can visit our website and say 10.0.3.11, and that should bring up the Apache website. So Apache is working, our files and everything, our server, our web server is working. So the next thing that we have to do is to let it get rid of this default page and then serve WordPress. So let's get back into our web server, and here we are going to download WordPress. So our WordPress, we are going to download WordPress. So for that you can visit wordpress.org, not .com, but then wordpress.org, and then when you get there, click on get WordPress, and then through that you can download WordPress. So it will download as a zip file. So but now we are going to download our WordPress. So there's the command wget, then the link to download the zip file. So you can get that link if you are using this as me. You see, whenever you hover your mouse here on the button, you see a link here at the bottom. So let me just get it here. Whenever I hover the mouse over here on the button to download, you can see a link there, and that's the link we are typing in. So basically the wget command is going to fetch the file or download a file from the WordPress website. So when I press enter, it should immediately start downloading the latest WordPress version for us. So if I do an ls, we can see our our latest .zip file ready and over there. So the next thing that we can do, we should do, minimize that. So on our web server, the next thing that we are going to do is to extract our WordPress folder by using the unzip program we downloaded earlier. So the command to use is unzip, then the name of your zip file, and that is going to extract it into a folder, you know. So all of these are the files that exist in the WordPress zip file. So let me clear that off screen so that we can see things clearly. So let me clear that, and then when I ls, you can see a folder, a blue folder has just appeared. So if I cd into WordPress and I ls, we can see all the WordPress files, our index and the PHP files. That is our WordPress web application. But we are not going to keep WordPress here. We are not going to run it here. So would have to move it to our var www directory. So I can show you that. We can cd into that directory, cd into /var, right, and /ww, and over here we have our HTML. We have an HTML directory, and if I ls into that HTML, and then we can see that there's an index file in there. So we can also cut that index. Cut means to view. So as a matter of fact, let's just use nano for now so that I can scroll through this. So you can see our default WordPress page here, everything here, the default page that we saw in our user when we visited this page. This is the index for that page. So you can see, so anything I change here, you know, it will also be applied here. For example, I'm going to add a simple hello here, and I'm going to save it. Oh, I forgot to run this as sudo, so I have to, and I can use sudo so that I have the privileges to edit the file. So back in, and I can say hello, right, and then I can save, and then if I restart, so you can see the hello at the top here in our browser, here in our app. But let's just do something bigger. Let's just do something that is much more visible. So we can come down here to the main header. Okay, so we can see the Apache default. So I can say the server is working, something like that, right? So X, Y, enter, and when I refresh, we should see that our change has been implemented here. So basically, this is the directory where we have to put our WordPress folder so that we can serve it. So what we can do is move, then I use the tilde to direct us to the home directory, and then WordPress, right? So we are moving the WordPress folder from where it was in the home directory, and then we are going to move it to our var /www directory, and sudo, forgot to use sudo. Okay, so now we have our WordPress here, but then unfortunately it's still not going to run, so we have to edit our Apache configuration to redirect it to tell Apache to serve our WordPress. So now if I refresh the page over here, our WordPress files are not going to show up. So what we have to do is just modify Apache to tell Apache that, hey, we have a WordPress web app in the directory, so instead of serving the HTML file, rather serve the WordPress app. So for that, we'd have to enter the etc or the Apache directory where Apache is installed and has all the configuration files. So etc, then Apache 2, then so let's go there first, and then we can see, so we'd have to enter into sites enabled, so we can cd into sites enabled, and let's ls, and then we can see a default, a 000 default.conf, so we can sudo nano using the nano editor to edit it, and then 000 conf so that we can edit it. And then here you can see it says document root. We are going to change it and change it to WordPress because the name of our folder, the folder name, so WordPress, and that should do it, nothing more. So let's save our file, and since we have changed Apache's configuration, we'd have to restart Apache to update its servers, because without restarting Apache, still we are not going to get our WordPress web app yet. So we'd have to restart the server so that it loads up everything and then serves it and serves WordPress. So we can do that by running sudo system ctl, and would have to pass in restart, then Apache 2, right? So we have this, and then our service has been restarted. So now when we refresh, we should get our WordPress site. So we are serving our WordPress site, right? So WordPress is working on our domain here, and if we click on let's go, we don't have a database connected, so even if we type in something new here, it won't work just here. You know, we don't have a database set up, so we don't even have a name for our database yet. So now we are going to leave our WordPress server for now and then configure our MySQL database on the other server. So this is our MySQL database. So over here, we are going to download MySQL. Okay, so with this link, I'm going to get the configurations for MySQL for APT based system. So run this, and then I run sudo, I update my repository, so sudo apt update and a password. Okay, so after running apt update, we get this, that we have 10 packages that have to be upgraded, which that is the MySQL. So we are going to run sudo apt upgrade, and that should install. What we have to do is to install the file we downloaded with wget. So we can say sudo, let's just ls. Okay, so you can see our .deb file which is the MySQL. So now we can say ls and we can say sudo then dpkg, passing the option I to install, and we're going to give the name and we're going to press enter. Okay, so at this point here we select what we want to install and what we want to enable and disable, and then we click on OK. So let's clear the screen again, and then let's install MySQL Server. So sudo apt install MySQL and server, and that should run. Okay, so when it asks you for a root password, just give it a password and click on OK. Re-enter your password, and yes, use strong password encryption. Press on OK. Okay, so now we have MySQL installed. So now when we run, let's check if it's running. We can check that with sudo system ctl then status, sudo system ctl then status MySQL, and we can see that MySQL is running. And so now we can start using and configuring MySQL. So the next thing to do is to enter MySQL by running this command. Let me clear the screen first. So we can run this command, MySQL then -u for the user, then you run root, so you are the root user, and -p, and so with that then you enter the password you inserted whilst configuring it. So alright, so we are into MySQL. So now let's check. We can check what we have right now, the defaults. Let's just check the default. So let's see, show databases, then a semicolon, and these are the default databases that exist in MySQL. And we can also say maybe select, and we're going to show the users and the hosts. So we can say select maybe user, then hosts, then from MySQL.users, and here we can see the default users and their hosts. So the next thing that we have to do is create a database. We're going to do that by running create database. So database, so create database, then the name of the database, I'm going to name our WordPress database WP and underscore DB. If you use a hyphen, it will give you an error. So it's either you go with the full name or with underscores. So we can run this, and that's with that we can see. So we can run show databases. We can run show databases, and we can see WP underscore DB exists as a database. So now we have to create a user that will access WordPress, which a user for our WordPress, right? And so that user, we can say we create user, then we can pass in the username. So let's call him the WordPress user admin underscore WP, right? And we'll put at, and then over here we have to put in, because there's going to be a remote access, right? So we have to put in the IP address of our WordPress server. So that was 10.0.3.11, and then we can add a password. So we can add a password by saying identified. Hope I got that spelled correct. Identified by, then you add the password that you want to add. So I'm going to create a simple password called hello world. So that's my password. Don't use this on a real project, but for testing purposes, that is our password, hello world. Okay, so add a semicolon and enter. So now we can also check our database and see, using the up arrow we can view our database, and we can see that our new user has been added. So now we are going to give our user privileges to be able to create, because WordPress would have to create and manage the database, so you don't do this for regular people, but if you are running a program like WordPress, you know that it's not going to damage your database, so you can give it full permissions, right? So you do that by running grant, or then privileges. Then we're gonna put asterisk and then a dot to signify all databases. So this will be on, feel me? So on, then we're going to add to, then user, so we called him admin underscore WP, then we said the host is 10, so 10.0.3.11, then so we have that as our username. So we can add a semicolon, and if you run this and it doesn't work, check your spellings and check your commands really well, because they are very vital. So okay, so I got an error. So I believe I made a spelling mistake right here. So I got this spelling wrong, privileges, my bad. So this should work now. Okay, so now we have given our WordPress user full admin rights, and with that we are pretty much done with the MySQL server. But we have to do one more important, very important thing to be able to allow us to do our remote connections, or for MySQL to allow remote access, from other servers, from per se our web server, for example. So what we're going to do is exit out of here. We are done with configuring and preparing the MySQL server, so we can just exit by running quit. Okay, and so now so we are going to go into our MySQL configurations, right? Not the actual server, but like the configurations for that the server runs on, right? So that is in our etc directory. So we can cd /etc, then MySQL, then let's get here, and then ls, and we want to get into mysql.conf.d. so that is cd, then mysql.conf.d, and there's a very important file here, and then we are going to sudo nano this file, mysqld.cnf.conf. so sudo nano, then mysqld.cnf, and let's pass our password. Okay, so over here we are going to put in a very important command. So the command is bind, then so bind address, right, and let's put an equal sign, and let's say 0.0.0. this is an IP address, an IPv4 address, basically meaning everything, every address, every remote connection, every IP address that requests will connect. It doesn't necessarily mean every address will be able to connect, but it will only allow one specific address because our admin has the specified address. So we have this, and we are going to save it, and now it's saved. So now we have to come back to our web server. So in our web server we have to make sure that our web server, the WordPress configurations, right, so that exists in our var directory and WordPress, and we need to modify the wp config sample php. You have to create a wp config.php. so first let's duplicate or copy the sample file into our file, the file we want, and that will be wp-config. then we are going to create a new file called wp-config.php, and so that should duplicate it. We can check again, and we have wp-config.php. and so now we are going to sudo nano, then So sudo nano, then wp config, .php, and password. Okay, so here is the finalized part. So we created a database name. So let me just check that. Okay, so let's check our database name again. Let's enter into the MySQL server. MySQL-u root -p and a password, and then we can say show databases, and the name of our database was wp-db. So that should be, we should enter it here, no caps, wp underscore db, and the username we set was, so let's get the username. So the username, we can go with select. Okay, so we can do that. So we can go select from user, then we can see our username. So with our username, let's enter our username and configure WordPress to access our MySQL database with that username. So we are going to say the user is admin underscore wp, then the password we configured for our admin, which was hello world. Obviously you won't set this password in a real world scenario, just for practice and sample sake I'm setting this password. So that was our password. That is our password, hello world. And now we are going to put in the host. So the host now is not going to be a local host, it's going to be the remote host. So here we are going to put in the IP address of our server, and let me just double check that. Let's quit this, run IP address, and we have .10. Okay, so we can run 10.0.3.10, right? And that should be it. So let's save it, Control X, Y, and enter. And with that, we would have to restart both Apache and MySQL. So system ctl sudo restart Apache 2, and that has been restarted. And over here we can, or we should also sudo system ctl restart MySQL, and that should also restart. Nice. So now the moment of truth, let's check our system here to make sure, in hopes that we can actually connect to our database. So put in my password, and I'm going to come here and I'm going to say just get back and refresh. So we have configured it, so we should just have to set this, right? So it's been successful, and we can add a test data, so which means that we can say test, then let's say test site, and let's say hello world as our username, and sample, and let's give our email nothing@nothing, right? So this is all sample data, and we can just click on install WordPress. Let's just save that for later to log in. And so you can see successful, we are successful. So we can log in into our database, into our WordPress website, and voila, we have a working WordPress web application, which is connected to a remote MySQL database. And this thing can be done with on any system. All you just need to do is configure and then change, you know, the configurations to point MySQL and WordPress to each other remotely, of course, and everything should be fine. So I don't think we need to do anything, go any further, but just to prove to you that we have data in our database, I'm going to create should I create a new page? I should create a new post. Let's create a new post, right? So a new post, let's create a new post. Okay, so let's see, WordPress works, right? And let's see, the remote database and server and web server, and web server are connected and communicating. Okay, so we can publish this. Let's publish this as a post, sample post. You know, we could view the post, you know, and so let's check our database, you know, to see what data we have in our database now. And -u, then let's do that root, and then -p, and put in our password. And so let's show our databases. So I'm going to use our previous command. Okay, so that's the name. So we are going to say use, then wp underscore db, and a semicolon. Then we can say, you know, show us the tables. Oh, I didn't add a semicolon. Okay, so you can see all the WP tables, the table that WordPress created.